Here. Now I want to have you take us through all the different ways,
okay,
and then I'm going to show you a downstream cast that a lot of people haven't thought about. What do we get? A fish?
Yeah, you just had a fish take your fly.
We don't care about that stuff. We're teaching. This is about teaching, not about catching. All right, and folks, I want you to understand we're fishing. When we say downstream, we're really fishing sort of downstream. It's below us. Right. But it's not pure downstream. Now I'm going to let Pete show you that, then I'm going to show you some pure downstream stuff.
Once again, what we have is something similar to drift boat fishing.
Right.
And I know not everyone drift boat fishes, but if you ever get in that situation, these are applicable to,
right,
to both things. So what I like to do is approach it kind of in the same situation that we approach these, except you kind of have an advantage here. You're probably not going to have any issues with your back cast. And also, if you're far enough up above the fish, they can't really see what's going on that's
right,
floating down to them. But beware, because if you walk down on them, they will see you because they're looking right up at you. Fish
right,
are 99% of the time they're looking up current. So,
but they've got this, Pete, they've got this window though.
Right.
And they've got some blind areas in that because they're looking up into the sky. Exactly. So you can get fairly close to them, but once that fly gets into that window, and that window changes by the depth that they're at. So if they're rising and they're close to the surface, that window's going to be a lot smaller.
Yeah, and you can get surprisingly close. That's a question that I get a lot of times when I'm teaching is, how close can I get and how do you feel where the window is? And you can look at all the diagrams you want in science books and things like that about where their sight window is. The best way I know is to get a feel for each individual fish, where their sight window is.
It's obvious that a downstream cast is going to get the fly into the window first rather than the line.
Right.
And we accomplish this with a variety of casts. And first of all, the one that's slightly downstream, which is the upper lower quadrant, the way I like to put it.
Breaking it into quadrants.
The upper part, right out here. So show us that cast, Pete.
You can just lay it in there.
But you're going to get drag right here.
Right. And if you go straight line, you're going to get drag instantly.
Right.
So you're going to need to do the aerial mends that we were talking about before.
Right.
You can use these same casts all the way down through here. Let's do that. Let's aerialize the mend.
Backing off the power.
And I'm adding a little line too. I'm kind of.
Oh, you just had a fish.
This is a reaction. I know we're in instructional mode, but
that's all right.
Got to do that, and I missed it, of course.
That's okay.
But anyway, back to that cast. If you got to aerialize the mend there, it's a nice one too. It's probably the one that I do first, that I approach first when I'm walking up, especially if I'm working through a run pretty fast and I'm trying to be as effective as possible. So these aerial mends, I think, are the one thing that can make you a better fisherman. The one thing that you really need to grab.
And I want to tell you, folks, that little exercise that we showed you just a few minutes ago is how you learn to do it over and over again in your lawn. And so when you get out on a stream, like what Pete's doing, it's all automatic. Look how nice and soft that was. Trying to get that fish now, aren't you? But you know, there's no drag. Well, you know, we've been using indicators here, Pete, and as we all know, you're on Team USA, and it was Slovakia 2004,
right,
and you did the best of the U.S. team, and it was nymph fishing.
Absolutely.
But it was nymph fishing without an indicator.
Yep, you're not allowed to use an indicator, and personally I wouldn't choose to use one in those situations.
Why? You get more fish?
I just think you have more options without an indicator. You have more presentation options without an indicator.
I notice right now you've set up some European nymphing. You've got an anchor nymph, a heavy nymph,
yep,
and you've got another nymph up here.
Mm-hmm.
These are really heavy. In fact, you could add several nymphs on this, couldn't you?
Yeah, I often fish with 3 nymphs in the competitions in Europe.
But that creates a casting nightmare.
You better know what you're doing as far as how you're gonna, basically you're doing a lot of lobbing of casts. It's a skill for sure.
Well, why don't you, I just noticed behind there, that's a perfect Euro nymphing run.
That is a Euro nymphing run if I've ever seen one.
So let's go down there and let's show everybody how you do this lob cast.
Let's give it a shot.
Well, let's see this casting technique and how it relates to fishing.
This is a perfect situation where you have advantages over a strike indicator, I feel, because you can move a lot faster, you can cover more water, and you can get the fly to where the fish are faster, okay? Because you're not necessarily setting up your indicator with mends and things like that. I have very little line out of the end of the rod. I'm changing it a little bit for this situation, and the cast I'm going to make is a lob. and you really don't have a lot. You're just basically lobbing the weight of your flies either in a backhanded cast, depending on which side of the river you're on, or you can do it from the side too and flip it over that way. You can add as much as 20, 30, 40 feet of line, depending on how good you are at the lob, but I'm going to stick with something real basic here. So let me demonstrate this a little bit.
It's also good when you have a lot of brush behind you too.
It's a great technique for anything. It's not just if you're in Europe fishing for grayling. I mean, you can use this for almost anything, and it has been used for, for 50 plus years. You got to have tension before you can load the rod to lob it up. It's just key. You can't pick up a slack line.
Just like a roll cast.
Exactly.
Tension of the water.
So I'm going to flip it over. This is actually an easy lob right here. And I'm just Euro nymphing right now.
So you're slightly pulling the nymph just a little bit faster than the current.
Right, and you'll see it looks strange. It looks like, hey, there's drag on that fly. Well, that's on purpose.
Yep.
Because basically you're in touch with the flies,
right,
with what you're fishing.
You're going to feel a strike. You're going to get 80% of the strikes, or 80% of the takes, you're going to get a chance to hook them. Where on an indicator, you may only get 30 or 40% of the takes.
You see how I kind of do a big windmill?
Yep.
I'm actually loading it from out here and flipping it around.
Pete, I've noticed you just fished the closer water, and then what do you keep adding line and going out farther, right?
Yeah, it's one of the options that you can do with Euro nymphing, is you can actually add a little line to each cast and work your way out, especially if you can't access it.
Okay, so let's see some longer casts.
Okay, let me add a little line on the next one here.
Okay. Okay, notice you're raising your rod up right here. You're giving it a little pull there at the end.
Yep.
Raising the rod up.
See how I shot a little line? And
yep,
you can certainly just lob it over to add your line too that way. And now I'm fishing an extra 15 feet. I got to pull my line in a little, but there we go.
It's just bumping right on the bottom, isn't it?
Yep.
And your cast is so important that you have it upstream. Okay, again, you're just throwing in a mend when you make that cast. There you go, reaching out. Now, if you did an overhead cast, not only would the flies come crashing into the rod, but they would not be at that same angle, would they?
Exactly, that's a great point right there. You got a lot of options with this lob right here. Not to mention, look how fast I can fish if I'm moving up this area right here.
Yep.
I can just cover this, lead with it a little.
You're really covering the water better than any other method, because each time you can add 6 inches and move out. Really a terrific nymphing technique.
Also, you can let it swing on the downswing.
And of course, with the heavy flies that you put on, there's no need of sinking lines. You're getting right on the bottom.
Right, and I use a smaller diameter tippet.
What a lot of anglers don't realize, that sinking lines in fast streams just really don't help you. Oh, and you got to fish. Hey.
And you bring them in, slide them on in.
Yep.
Little brown trout.
Well, that might even have counted in the World Championships.
This is a probably what, 8-inch, 7-inch fish?
7-inch fish. They go by centimeters over there.
Yep.
But you would have never felt that fish with an indicator, would you?
That's the beauty of a technique like this with a lob. The Europeans figured it out, is that I'm in full contact with my flies.
And
I felt that guy and just kind of set him and brought him in, and you can see how close you are to the fish as well, which is nice because you don't play out a lot of fish. You can basically hurt a fish by playing them out from a long distance. This way you can bring them in, release them, get them on their way pretty quick.
It's just a great technique. Now, longer rod, a lot of the Europeans will use rods up to even 12 feet.
Yeah, they will. And basically what it does is it gives you more reach. One of the secrets to Euro nymphing is staying in certain water columns, or certain feeding lanes, actually, I should say. This is the columns, this is the lanes this way. And you can really control that if you're underneath the tip of your rod. And so let's say that you can't wade any further, or you don't want to approach the fish. Well, with a 10-foot rod, you get an extra foot or so, and that's why they do that. And they'll go all the way down to 4 foot, or 4-weight 10. Yeah. 4-weight 10 foots, exactly.
One thing I want to, before we leave this, is to understand that this technique, while the hallmark of competition fishing, is really a terrific way of fishing when the fishing gets tough, especially cold weather, inclement conditions. And the indicator fishing just isn't something that you could fish shore in here. Now what I'm going to do right now is go with the big stuff. And one of the problems that we have with casting streamers or woolly buggers or anything is that we have a couple situations that can happen. And that is split shot. Pete, how many times have you seen a split shot or a cone head fly or something hit a rod and shatter it?
It's one of the most common ways to break a rod.
And one of the things that I've found is a new way of fishing and taking the split shot away. Now, if you're in Yellowstone Park, you can't use lead.
A lot of places you can't.
And this replacement tin isn't all that heavy.
Right, right. Exactly, it's not a good option in a lot of situations where you need to get it down.
And what I've done is, again, we've spent a lot of time in Europe, Pete and I, with the World Fly Fishing Championships, and a lot of people ask, what have they done for us in the fly fishing? What has competition done for us? Well, one of the things that brought us bead-headed nymphs.
Yeah.
The Belgian team introduced us when they
gold heads.
Use lead.
They call them gold heads.
Yeah, the gold heads. But what they've given to us is sinking leaders. This is a poly leader. A lot of different brands out there, and essentially this is about 2 split shot. 2 split shot. Now it's dark, it's hard for you to see that, and you can get them in different weights. This happens to be a 6, one of the heavier ones. You can get them in intermediate, which just means just a little under, like maybe 1 split shot.
Right.
This is not going to break my rod, and I can use a shorter leader. I attach to that just some monofilament line here. Well, this makes it a lot easier to cast. If you start casting a streamer and you got a 9-foot leader, you're going to have a problem.
Oh, absolutely.
And I have this attached to an intermediate tip line, and I want to show you some of the casts with streamer fishing using this wonderful leader. It's going to be easier to cast than about 3 split shots. And I've got a heavy fly on here. This is a cone-headed kiwi muddler right here. That's a
that's a great streamer.
That's a weapon, though.
It is. It is. It's heavy. It's heavy.
So let's take a look at some of these casts by going out here. We've got a couple good spots here. One of the things that you'll find with your streamer cast, Pete, and you do a lot of it, is most of the time you're going to be going across and downstream. It's almost the same technique of your European nymphing. We're going to pull the fly with the current. Again, why?
So you stay in contact with your fly.
Boy, you said the word, contact, staying in contact. And we want it to also imitate the minnow.
It helps it swim.
There's no way those minnows are going to swim up this stream, are they?
No, not this part, especially right here.
Okay, now the first thing you're going to realize is that casting a big heavy fly false casting is not something that's going to be in the program. If you're going to do something like this, you've got to wait for that fly to straighten out. And you've got to put more energy in this back cast. Again, it's like throwing the indicators. We're going to increase the energy, we're going to deepen the loop by putting more energy in that cast. We're going to come up and stop and point into the loop. Well, Pete, you know, the important thing, again, no false casting. This roll cast pickup comes incredibly important on the streamer fishing, because if you pick this fly up like this, whoa, I noticed that. It has your name on it, doesn't it?
I'm just built to duck that thing.
So what we're going to do is accelerate it up, come back up like this. Notice the trees behind us here.
Yeah,
if I go right here, whoops, I got problem.
Pretty good brush right behind us right now.
So what we're going to do is that we're going to change our casting angle. Instead of, again, right here, we're going to almost tilt ourselves. We're going to go up. We're going to increase more energy here. We're actually pointing into the loop. Pointing into the loop, so when that fly comes up, you're actually straight in line with the fly.
Oh yeah, I can see where that would be effective in this situation right here.
We're straight in line with the fly. Here we go. And then we come down, we pull down on the rod. Again, that pull down cast. And as you get really good at casting these streamers, what you'll even do is be able to do a downstream mend in it. Now when I cast here, I reach out. Now we got a downstream mend and we've been going upstream mend.
Well, a lot of people are confused on that one. They're saying, whoa, wait, you can mend downstream too?
Of course you can, because what do we want the streamer to do? We want it to swim downstream. Right now it's swimming downstream. and I'm giving it a little action and working it back across. It's going to swing back across. Our cast is incredibly important. Now, here we go. We're going to use our roll cast. Now, say if you have it right here, watch how we do with our roll cast. We're going to pump it up in the air, come back, shoot the line over, follow it with our rod tip, strip it back, and again, keep it in contact.
Right.
And when you get really good at this, the more you do it, you're going to find you do the same thing what you did. I lobbed it over there, and I picked it up without even doing a roll cast. Your lob cast is important in streamer fishing too. Now, I'm going to try it. What I try to do when I fish a streamer, I see brown trout laying in under there. So I'm going to increase my cast. Again, I'm going to go up here, back up, and across. Keep it in contact. And another cast I'm going to do, again, I'm going to roll cast it out. I'm not so worried about spooking the fish. Boom, hitting it over and letting that current pull it back around. There we go, back around. Now, you know, we talked about streamers, but you know, there's another thing you use a lot is woolly buggers.
Oh yeah.
And dead drifting, same type of thing.
Yeah, I fish them in a nymphing style all the time.
This sinking leader,
yep.
Woolly bugger on there, and we're going to again do the same type of thing, almost like your lob over like this, and now we're going to keep a rod high and let it dead drift down. Same thing what a split shot would do. Again, keeping a little loop of line, and a lot of times I'll have a little loop right here, and then I can actually feel when the fish takes, boom.
Yep, and you're in contact with it. Also, holding your rod up gives you a little more access a little further. You can see that just waiting right here, I mean, you got 1 foot in the grave and one on the other one on a banana peel, right? If you're out in the middle of that stuff. So just elevating the rod also gives you a little more reach.
Again, I'm going to do the same thing. Again, back out, up, around, cast, high rod tip. Steelhead fishermen do this an awful lot. Yep. Downstream swing. That downstream swing is a very popular. And again, being able to come out of this so that you can get your line moving back and through again. The main thing, I think if I could tell all of you out there, is you can't bring that rod back like this. The more you bring it back, you've got to learn to bring it up rather than back, because nothing's worse, and we've all been there, you've been in a drift boat when this has happened, is to have this cast go right back and hit you in the back of the head, because it's coming at this angle, and I'll tell you, all it takes is one time.
Yeah, and a lot of the results from too wide of a casting arc, which is what you're talking about, is the whole chuck and duck phenomenon, because it's coming through.
That's right.
If you have too wide of a casting arc for this type of situation, it's going to cause you trouble. I mean,
again, bring that rod tip up. Bring that rod tip up, pull down, and this is where a haul comes in. When I come in, watch, I pull down, and that can shoot the line. Again, back up, pull down, shoot the line. Streamer fishing can be quite fun, especially if you don't hit yourself in the head. And